Childhood trauma has a massive impact on our mental health as adults as we're growing up. A behaviour is a solution to the problem, to our problem. What was the problem? In therapy, the first thing that has to happen, in my opinion, is validation. Validation of what it was like. We don't do things, we don't have coping mechanisms to make our life difficult, to put obstacles in the way. If we've not been shown love, we're going to believe we're unlovable. Hello everybody, I'm Catriona Morten, I'm a sensory motor psychotherapist. And today I'd like to talk about childhood trauma and mental health. But before I jump into that, if you're enjoying these videos, then please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, because it helps us get our message out there to tons more of you. So, childhood trauma and mental health, they're very, very closely linked. And childhood trauma has a massive impact on our mental health as adults as we're growing up. It is not given the significance that it needs, and it's not considered enough by most mental health professionals and doctors, in my opinion. If we've experienced neglect, our needs have not been met, we've not been adequately fed, we've not been looked after, we've not been adequately clothed, we've been ignored for long periods of time, left, not given any attention, that has significant impact on us. If we've experienced living with fear, constant fear, not knowing what's going to kick off next, what's coming our way, what's coming into the house next, or going to blow up in the house, well, that's going to have a significant impact on how you are. If there's been a lot of violence around, if there's been abuse, all of these things, how could they not have a massive effect on us, both physiologically, mentally, our belief systems, our immune system, how we can concentrate, how relaxed we can be. None of those things are going to be an option. And when children who live in households like that then go to school, it doesn't just switch off. Those children are always the ones that are reported to be disruptive, they don't pay attention, they don't know how to interact with other children, they don't learn, they don't remember, they don't recall things. It's like, well, I wonder if what's going on at home or what's going on in their life is significantly impacting their ability to function, to just live a normal life. And I don't believe that that is looked at or considered enough. When I was in the NHS, the only thing that was considered was the symptoms. What's wrong with these children? Not what's happened to them. And so if they can't concentrate, if they're always on the go, and if you think about it, if you're a target, then one of the best ways to not be a target is to be constantly on the go. Don't sit still. A moving target is harder to hit. Those things were never considered. It's like, okay, well, what's wrong with them? And give them some medication to sort that out. Not looking at what on earth is impacting them in their life, because that's going to have serious implications. Also, it affects our immune system. It affects everything physiologically. And those children in the CAMS team, in the NHS, had much higher incidence of physical disorders, physical diseases, things that would go wrong with their bodies. And again, in my opinion, it wasn't considered enough. Often we're just kind of told, oh, well, that's in the past. You know, people can get over it. Children are really resilient. Yes, they are, but some things you can't get over. Some things are just too overwhelming and difficult to live with. We can't just get over them and, oh, other people have it much worse. Well, that may be true, but the vast majority of people who come to see me who have tried all kinds of other mainstream things, the one thing that they have in common is that they've had a very troubled, problematic, violent, neglectful, abusive childhood. And it creates belief systems in them. They've got to have all these different coping mechanisms in order to deal with this. Just imagine living in constant fear. well, your ability to concentrate on what's going on around you and what's going on at school, that's going to be seriously impaired, because you've got to be hyper-vigilant, ready for anything, switched on. Now, those things just automatically create more cortisol, more adrenaline in your body if you're always ready to fight, flight, or freeze. And that will happen because if things are just too overwhelming, and as children, there's not much we can do about things. We have to develop ways of protecting ourselves. That can be numbing out, not feeling anything, disconnecting from our environment around us. Different levels of dissociation. It makes a lot of sense. Now, all of these things, they can't just be switched on and switched off. Our brain, our nervous system, they don't work like that. If we're in a heightened state of fear or high arousal all the time, or the majority of the time, then we're going to stay in that state because it's not safe to just relax and not pay attention to what's going on around you, because you might need to learn how to second guess. I wonder what's happening. Oh, it's really quiet. I wonder what that means. Or, oh, so-and-so's drinking. Oh my God, I wonder what that means. Or starting to hear fights forming. You're going to have an alert system to all of those things, and it stays switched on. And so those coping mechanisms that we need as we're growing up, they carry on as we grow up, and we just learn to adapt. But it often means that we're not living our life either the way that we really want to, or it's not as fulfilled as we know it should be. Or, looking at how other people do things and going, how can they just be so relaxed and enjoying themselves? Or how is it that some people can just retain all this information? I've got an eraser that just seems to erase things. Well, that would be very handy if things are constantly happening and you can't carry all of this with you. Having an eraser that just goes, oh yeah, well that happened, but actually I don't recall it. I don't remember that. Brilliant, because we need our capacity in order to just function with normal life. It's also going to inevitably create belief systems. And these things are unconscious. Often they come from either our lived experiences or what we've been told. If we've been told or treated as though we're worthless, we're going to believe we're worthless. If we've not been shown love, we're going to believe we're unlovable. We don't put the blame on what's happening because it doesn't work like that with children. They take the blame on themselves. It must be me. There must be something up with me. Or, it doesn't matter what I do, it always ends badly. Okay? Or those belief systems that just unconsciously work their way through and feed into everything that we do. And we might notice we've got these patterns of recurring behaviour and cycles of things that we just keep going round in, but not understand what it is that's underneath that's playing itself out, because it's just always been that way. And these things show up as ADHD, eating disorders, self-harm, drug alcohol use, OCD, I could go on, depression, anxiety. It will manifest itself in these things. But instead of looking at what's wrong with you in an assessment, it's way more beneficial and makes so much more sense of our presentation to say, what was life like for you back then? What was it like looking through your eyes? What was it like living this life? And it can give you a really good sense of, why these things are necessary. Because as I say a lot, but it's important, we don't do things, we don't have coping mechanisms to make our life difficult, to put obstacles in the way. We've put them there because they've been necessary, often life-saving. We've put them there because we've needed them in order to function. And speaking of functioning, some people, even although they learn to dissociate and not be present and be numb, a lot of people have a functional part of them that will still be able to go through the motions of things, carry out functions. They're not just completely frozen. And I have a lot of clients when they start to kind of talk about or remember things that were difficult, you can almost see and sense this internal freezing. And it's often through the top half of the body, their core, their breath, their stomach, their shoulders. But their arms will still be moving and their face will still be engaged. But there'll just be that sense of stillness through the body. And they've learnt to freeze, numb off, disconnect, but still go through the motions. So sometimes to just not draw attention to themselves, or because life's had to go on. And that functional part can really fool a lot of people. Oh, they seem okay. And even in an assessment, it's like, well, you seem okay. But if you look at what's going on underneath in the body, through the nervous system, showing up physiologically, it can tell a completely different story. The other thing that a lot of people that have had to live their lives like that get branded with is being manipulative. Now, if you've had to be manipulative, it's because you've had to go around the houses or be very kind of avoidant or discreet about what it is that you want or what it is you're trying to do or what you want somebody to be able to do for you. Because quite often, if you just state a need or state an opinion or show up, that can get attacked. And so children that live in those kind of circumstances, they learn how to kind of work the system, and that's the system that they live in. And I think it's very unfortunate and very disingenuous for those people to get a label of being manipulative. And labels like that, they can just carry on through, and somebody picks up a file, sees these things, it's like, oh, and makes a judgment and an assumption before they ever meet someone. My approach is always a behaviour is a solution to the problem, to our problem. What was the problem? And backtracking it so that everything makes sense. It's like these things are just symptoms of what we've had to live through coping mechanisms and leftover developmental wounds that we've had. They're not the actual thing. For the healing of that, we've got to be able to go back and look, what were the missing pieces? What were the things that were not available to you? What were the things that you missed out on, that you lost? What is it about nurture that's so difficult or painful? All of those things are really important to understand in therapy. And in therapy, the first thing that has to happen, in my opinion, is validation. Validation of what it was like. Not having a hierarchy of, oh, well, other people had it much worse. At least you made it this far, or, at least you had this and that. It's like, no. Validation of it was too much, it was frightening, it was overwhelming, it was painful, it was upsetting, whatever it was. To really validate that part, that experience, so that any part of someone that needs to show up in therapy, they know they're welcome. They know that anything that shows up is going to be seen as part of this internal system. Everything that comes up in therapy tells a story, and bodies, they narrate their own story. If it's really difficult to go in and sense what's going on in there because we fear, being overwhelmed or it being too much, well, that's because things have been overwhelming and too much. And it's about finding safe ways which work for every individual of how to connect with the body. That it's not just some great big overwhelming thing. Learning the things that help you regulate, when you can start to recognise what's actually happening in the body to dysregulate it. And we can only heal these wounds by working with the body, the brain, the nervous system, because this is where it all plays out. This is where all the action is, if you like. And so we've got to include the body in this. But it's a different way for everybody. It's not one size fits all. And if focusing on something is too difficult, that's okay. We just kind of clock it and focus on something else. We don't force anything, because the healing in therapy really has to be the polar opposite of all of the elements that made up the wounding in the first place. So we can't force anything. We can't just, do this and it'll work. Well, it might not. You know, this set of resources might be quite dysregulating. Brilliant. Let's look at things that are the opposite of that, the things that actually work, so that when we're working and trying to regulate our dysregulated nervous system, we know what works. It might not work for other people, but it works for us, and that's the important thing. So we're looking to the past to inform the present and get some clues about what might be needed, what those missing experiences might be, and then finding safe, small ways to meet those needs and to give these new experiences. It's always one foot in the past and one foot in the present, because it's different right now. It's different here. This is a different kind of relationship, and people are going to get different relationships with their emotions, their body, and any kind of nurture, self-soothing comfort. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope it resonates with some of you. And if you've enjoyed this video, again, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye!